Is it even possible to do that from the top down? I mean, I understand the importance of setting the right tone and direction, but if we think that creating a new office it's necessary, but I would argue not sufficient to really, if we're serious about wrapping our arms around this, it should be emphasized and trained and reinforced at much more broadly. Do you agree with that? Any ideas from anybody on how to do that, particularly looking at how others, adversaries or allies, are doing it?
A combination of top-down and bottoms-up is necessary here, because the individuals who are making the decisions of, when they get a new hard drive off of a military platform and they need to make the decision of what they're going to do with that hard drive, we need all the way down to that individual to understand that hard drive is full of data that will fuel the future of American military leadership. And so they need to understand that as viscerally as we do from a top-down perspective within the CDA or within this conversation. So it requires a whole of DoD approach to be able to properly achieve this outcome.
Congressman, the one thing I would add is that as we tackle these difficult challenges, and they are legion, that just from a mentality standpoint, I would encourage Congress and the U.S. government to approach these as challenges that have to be managed, not solved. If we make the perfect the enemy of the good, if we try to find the exquisite solution, we will so delay ourselves as that we will miss the opportunity. And that's one of the kind of key narratives I'm really trying to emphasize, is that we really do have a meaningful strategic opportunity. And these guardrails and everything, they matter. They really do. But as we approach these things, seizing the opportunity, I think, is probably one. And then doing it well and carefully is a part of that. But it cannot be the goal by which we have to leap over before we begin.
I appreciate and agree. Just very briefly, Dr. Moudyan and anyone else, particularly talking, you hit on it all a little bit, but we're talking about DoD, but how, your sense of in the research realm, academic realm, how are we doing there? What can we do better? I think I could guess, but.
So we can definitely, when we are investing in the research side of it, it opens the door for us on the innovation side to also invest in research on the safety aspect of it, on these guardrails that was mentioned. So we need to, when we are investing in the research, we need to consider both in parallel in order to make sure that we are always ahead of it.
Thank you. Go back, Mr. Chair.
We'll now move to a second round of questions. I'll begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. I want to return to Mr. Gates' question about key allies in the AI competition. You all mentioned, our most obvious allies. I mean, I think you're right. I'm not detracting from that answer. Five Eyes, NATO, EU. I'd like to invoke Jared Cohen's concept of sort of geopolitical swing states, perhaps countries that may not fit neatly within the free world paradigm. What are the emerging AI superpowers that we may not be thinking about, or let's just say states that punch above their weight when it comes to AI that we need to be cultivating and ensuring they're not Finlandizing in the Chinese Communist Party direction? I'll start with you, Mr. Wang.
I do think it's really important, as AI sort of promises to be one of the most important technologies, both economically and militarily, there are a myriad of countries that are all getting involved. Kind of as I mentioned, the UAE has a very dedicated effort towards artificial intelligence. They've open source models. They're continuing that series of developments towards building bigger and more powerful AI models. We don't know if they're going to open source them, but we'll see. I think it's important that as they develop those, that we try as hard as we can to make sure those follow our principles and our governance regimes. India is another key country, obviously, very critical when we think about geopolitical allies. But also as you think about their developments in AI, they have an incredibly active tech sector, and they have stated efforts to develop large language models within their country. So these are some of the countries I would say that from an AI perspective seem to be racing ahead, and ones that we want to ensure are thinking about artificial intelligence and its impacts in the same ways that we are as a country.
Mr. Kitchen?
Would agree completely. I think this affects the way we think about our relationship. So right now, our technology supply chain is distributed in such a way as to where there are critical vulnerabilities. Many of the key nodes are deep within Chinese sphere of influence. And where I think we're going to be going is we're going to try to build trusted technology ecosystems amongst trusted partners and allies. That the idea is that we identify particularly Western democracies as being the type of organizations that we can partner with so that we have mutually beneficial trade and technology relationships that are the core of future national security partnerships. That requires, however, a common purpose and a common understanding of the opportunities and the challenges. And one of the things I'm most concerned about is where many of our friends and allies are in the European Union, particularly on this issue. So my point there being that when we think about military interoperability in these types of alliances, we also need to understand that military interoperability is going to be predicated on regulatory interoperability. And that is where we have a real gap between us and some of our key friends. The European Union seems to have concluded that to build their own domestic technology base, they have to deliberately constrain and at times even decouple from the American technology base. And that will not work for our shared purposes and is going to be a real problem going forward.
Great point. Dr. Mahmoodian?
So I completely agree with other witnesses with regards to alliance. One of the things that we need to understand also that for those type of swing states that was mentioned, we need to also think about how we can align ourselves to them to make sure that their advancement in AI is also aligned to the United States, so we would have that alliance with them rather while we are ensuring that we are still the leader in this space.
Mr. Kitchen, you mentioned in written and oral testimony that on hardware, we have a strong bipartisan consensus allowing us to constrain China's advancement. There's been some suggestion, and maybe put on the Select Committee on China hat here, as we engage with Silicon Valley leaders, that while we admire the GPU export controls and the fact we're able to bring Japan and the Dutch along with us was great, and I give the Biden administration credit for that, there's loopholes whereby they're still able to access a tranche of the sort of second most advanced chips right now. I'm curious for your comments on that, and Mr. Wang, yours as well, and I recognize I run out of time here.
Yeah, so this goes to my previous point about an iterative process. I think you were referencing the October 7th rules, the export control on integrated chips. That was the first tranche, and now we're beginning to kind of optimize and tighten those controls. It's not a surprise that government and industry are doing a bit of back and forth on this. I think there is a growing recognition between both stakeholders that action is necessary, and now we're trying to find the right way forward. I have high confidence that we'll do that.
Quickly, Mr. Wang.
It is true. You can see reports that ByteDance and other Chinese companies have bought billions of dollars of GPUs in the past, it's in this year so far. So it is something that we need to be extremely careful and vigilant about.
Mr. Khanna.
Thank you. When Chairman Gallagher and I had that conversation with Elon Musk, he said that AGI was 5 to 6 years away. I was surprised by that timeline. What is your sense of how long we are from AGI?
AGI is an ill-defined concept, and I think many folks.
Could you define it, since we're not doing acronyms? Yeah. You're the guy. Sorry.
AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, the idea that we would build an AI that is sort of generally intelligent in the way that humans are. It's not a super well-defined concept because, even in using the current AI systems, you'll notice clear limitations and issues and challenges that they have with doing even things like basic math. The AGI as a concept is an enticing one that we in Silicon Valley talk about a lot, but I don't think it's very well defined and not something certainly that should meaningfully affect how we think about, putting one foot in front of the other for not only economic leadership as well as military leadership. The reality is that the technologies today, large language models, computer vision technology, and other AI systems that are being developed and deployed today have immense bearing on the future of our world, whether that's from an economic perspective or from a military perspective. And that's why I think it's important that we set the foundations today of investing into data, investing into test and evaluation to set up the foundations for long-term success. My last comment as it comes to AGI prediction timelines. I think this is often a way to sort of distract from the current conversation, which is, in my mind, very important.
Mr. Kitchen or Dr. Mahmoudin?
Yeah, I think Alex is exactly right. The idea of artificial general intelligence, I think what we will be seeing is increasingly agile and capable foundation models or these types of generative AI capabilities that are going to be more broadly applicable. So one of the features of these foundational models is something that's called emergent capabilities. It's the idea that we created this algorithm or this foundation model to be able to do a particular task, and lo and behold, it actually can do this other thing without having been trained to do so. So we're going to see that. That's a common feature. But I would say that the timeline that was given to you about artificial general intelligence in the next 5 years is aspirational.
If it's good. Anyway. Yeah.
Similar to the previous comments, it is aspirational, but what I would add to that is we are headed to that direction. We see, as mentioned, with regards to foundation models, these type of models that can provide tasks that are, they were not necessarily trained on, but they can generalize to some extent. However, while we are heading into that direction, obviously not in 5 years, but we need to also invest. While we are investing on the research side of it, we also need to invest in the guardrails, to safety aspects of it, to make sure that we are able to mitigate the risks that we are anticipating with regards to artificial general intelligence.
Maybe I'll quickly ask my last question, which is, do you think we need any DoD clearance for any types of AI like we have for nuclear technology? There are safeguards. There's only so many people who can get access to it. Mr. Wang, is there anything analogous in the AI space?
So as we think towards military AI systems, so much of the next generation of capabilities are going to need to be built and trained on top of already classified data. So there's already an existing sort of structure and regime to protect any models that are trained on classified data, whether it's at the secret or top secret or even beyond level, to ensure that those capabilities sort of stay limited to certain audiences and stay controlled. I don't know if we need to build even more on that, but I think that it's certainly true that most of the exquisite capabilities that the DoD looks to build are likely to be developed at the secret or top secret level.
Thank you.
Mr. Gates.
I'm interested in the integration of AI and human performance. We always are very touched whenever we have casualties that are in training or otherwise that are preventable. What have any of you learned about where some of the potential lies in utilizing AI in integration with sensor technology or other types of human performance capabilities?
One of the areas where artificial intelligence, I think, has some of the most greatest promise is in, as Mr. Kitchen mentioned before, is actually in logistics. So if you look at one of the largest causes of casualties, it actually was in transporting fuel and other resources for the military. This is an area where autonomous vehicles or even leader-follower setups are able to greatly improve the efficiency as well as reduce casualties for the military, and is one of the goals of the Army's robot combat vehicle program that we're collaborating with them on. As we look further, these AI systems are assistive technologies. With our Scale Donovan platform, we're able to assist in key decision making. This is being utilized right now in military planning exercises to help ensure that all of the data and information that the DoD has access to is being integrated into the correct military decisions. So there's an incredibly bright future, I think, for assistive use of artificial intelligence to make the DoD more effective.
This is one of the most exciting things about AI, in my view, is its ability to help expand human thriving. So many will have seen a commercial with one technology provider whose their phone could help users who have speech pathologies or difficulties communicate more effectively. The OpenAI, their ChatGPT has a function for vision-impaired individuals where it describes images for them so that they can participate in knowledge gain and application. And then when we think about in the military context, I mean, it's going to be the AI underlying technology and capability that enables everything from allowing paraplegics to walk again to brain injury prevention and recovery. I mean, the things that this technology, again, I'm not an idealist on this, but the promise is real, and what it means for our society just in general, I think is very promising.
As the son of a paraplegic mother, it's an inspiring concept. Doctor, I wanted to ask a little different twist on that question to you. I've talked with my colleague, Mr. Khanna, to some degree about how we ought to measure the soft power capabilities of some of these AI platforms. You know, how is it that ethicists are thinking about what it would mean for the United States as opposed to China to be the leader in deploying 100,000 AI robot doctors into Africa or Latin America or somewhere else in the global south?
It's all about how we want to have our values embedded into these AI systems. When we are thinking about these principles, one area that especially the DoD has is these systems to be governable. So depending on the level of risk that these systems pose, we want to have oversight. In some cases, the risk is low, so we may want to let the AI make the decision. Imagine a benign example being recommended a movie. That might be bad. But in specific cases, especially the ones that are lethal, we do not want the AI to make the decision. We want human oversight. We want AI to be used to provide us information, patterns that we may have not seen. So we would use those information, and us humans would be able to make the judgment. So these are elements that we need to consider when we are thinking about these.
That will substantially impact scalability and just the scale of being able to deploy the tech, I would think.
If we have a comprehensive governance processes, actually this does not necessarily be viewed as an obstacle with regards to scalability. A robust and comprehensive governance process actually enables us to have standards and policies in place that can easily apply to any AI use case that we have. So with that foundation of AI governance, we would be able to replicate the process for any AI use case that we have.
Thank you. And I haven't given you enough time to answer this question, Mr. Wang, but one of the things that I'm sure we'd like to explore with you further is when we get into this test and evaluation paradigm that you keep coming back to in your testimony, it's important for us to get a concept of what the core principles of that test and evaluation regime would look like, and I hope you'll continue to work with the subcommittee on that. Yield back.
I don't think there's any. I'm sorry. I'm going to do a third round, but it'll go very quick. Trust me. And I'm going to apply the what I call the justice test, which is a reference to my 96-year-old grandmother, Virginia Justice, who's very smart, but is not even a member of the flip phone generation, let alone the AI generation. So I want you to imagine you're sitting across from my grandma, each have an old-fashioned in hand. Her late husband was a World War II vet. And you get to explain to her why AI, what she needs to know about AI, why this conversation matters, both for the future of warfare as well as her life and the lives of her children and grandchildren. What do you say to the great and beautiful Virginia Justice?
If we look towards World War II and the last era of conflict, new technologies like the atomic bomb were critical in ensuring that we both had American leadership and that the values that America upholds were able to continue to prosper and set the tone for the development of the world. We're now embarking on a new era of the world, one in which a new technology, artificial intelligence, is likely to set the stage for the future of ideologies, the balance of global power, and the future of the relative peace of our world. Artificial intelligence is an incredibly powerful technology that underpins nearly everything that we do from an economic and military standpoint, and therefore it's critical that we as a nation think about how we not only protect our citizens from the risks of artificial intelligence, but also protect our ideologies and democracy by ensuring we continue to be leaders.
Mr. Kitchen?
Ma'am, there's a new technology that, under the right circumstances, could protect your grandchildren and this nation that could make this nation economically and militarily strong enough to defend its people and its interests, and a technology that in the wrong hands could imperil those same things. And it's really important that your government and industry work together to realize those promises and to mitigate those threats.
Great. Dr. Mahmoodian?
It's a technology that's pretty much embedded in our day-to-day lives. We are living with it, we are breathing with it. So we want to make sure that this technology that's part of our life has our values, the values that we fought for, is incorporated into this technology. So we still would have our civil liberties and civil rights, as well as using this technology and leveraging it to have a better quality of life.
Great. By the way, it just occurred to me, though I love being a Gallagher, if I had my mother's maiden name Justice, I mean, I'd probably be president at this point. That's such a better...
And a progressive. Huh?
Yeah. Well played. Any other questions? Okay, a bit of housekeeping before we adjourn. I want to enter three things into the record quickly. The first is the article I referenced before by Jared Cohen on the rise of geopolitical swing states, published on May 15th, 2023. The second is something that you, Mr. Wang, wrote in November of last year on the AI war and how to win it, in which you say we must recognize that our current operating model will result in ruin. Continuing on our trajectory for the next 10 years could result in us falling irrevocably far behind. Why do large organizations often continue on the path to their demise, even if the future is painfully obvious? The reason is inertia. Bureaucracies will continue to glide deep into the abyss for an eternity. And then the third is a recent article by Mark Andreessen, which articulates the optimistic case for AI, entitled Why AI Will Save the World, in which he says the single greatest risk of AI is that China wins global AI dominance and we, the United States and the West, do not. I propose a simple strategy for what we do about this. In fact, the same strategy President Ronald Reagan used to win the first Cold War with the Soviet Union, which is we win and they lose. So I ask unanimous consent to enter all three of those into the record. Without objection, so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 days to submit statements for the record. And the hearing stands adjourned.